We are going live. Sorry about that for anyone. I forgot to set it for vertical. It was horizontal, but here we have vertical streaming. We're going to go through some 90s and 2000s football players here. First, we have Drew Brees. Now, you think Drew Brees, you think New Orleans, but here he is with the then San Diego Chargers. So he started his career with the Chargers. Not sure everyone knows about that, but here's a card from '03 with him. Next player is his last name is famous in football circles. Brian Griese. His dad, Bob Griese, was a all-star caliber quarterback with the Miami Dolphins. I think he might have been the quarterback when they had the perfect season. I know that he was a quarterback in the 70s, but Brian went to Michigan and spent a good chunk of time with the Denver Broncos. And then I think he kind of bounced around a little bit, but I think people had higher expectations for him than he really had. Next, we have Derek Thomas of the Chiefs. He was a linebacker, outside linebacker for the Chiefs in the 90s. I want to say that he might have been the player that passed away early in his life, but I could be getting him confused with a defensive lineman back on that Chiefs team. But there he is, Derek Thomas, running back that made up the trio that was in Indianapolis. Edgerrin James here. He was with Peyton Manning. He was with Marvin Harrison, put on all those great shows and great teams there back in the 90s with the Colts. The next player is someone, for some reason, I really had an affinity for, liked him a lot. It was Corey Dillon of the Cincinnati Bengals. He put up some really good years, had a lot of 1,000-yard rushing years. I think he might have had some issues towards the end of his career or after he retired, but Corey Dillon was a strong player with the Cincinnati Bengals for quite some time, actually. Next player is one of my favorites, Jerome the Bus Bettis. I'm from St. Louis, and I enjoyed when the Rams moved here, and he was one of their bigger stars. Unfortunately, they pretty much got rid of him quickly after he moved here, but the Bus was a great player, especially back in those 90s. Eddie George, awesome player, great big kind of guy, a different kind of runner, different kind of body than the Bus, but he's still a lot to take down. And Bus was one of the best players that you could see. But Eddie George was wonderful. He went to the Super Bowl against the Rams in 99, 2000. He put on a great display. He was a lot to take down, like I said. So a wonderful player. Now, this card, we don't really know. He's not a household name, Rod Gardner. I just thought it was a cool card because if you look at it, it's this special die cut. And unfortunately, I got a no name, but I'm sure there were some really good players in here that are worth a lot more money than Rod Gardner. So, and then we have one of the toughest guys in the NFL, Ray Lewis. I mean, just always just a tough looking guy. I've heard a lot of quarterbacks say he was one of the toughest guys they had to play against, and he always looked that way. But this is something called Smash Mouth card. It came out by Vintage Upper Deck. And I would say that he was a Smash Mouth player. Okay, Justin Gage. You're all going to say, okay, who? One of the reasons I have Justin Gage in here is because he went to Mizzou. I live in Missouri. Here he is with Chicago. He actually started out as a quarterback and had to make the transition to wide receiver in college. Okay, another Homer kind of story here. This is Otis Anderson. He won a Super Bowl with the New York Giants, but for a long time, he was with the St. Louis Cardinals, and he was one of my favorite players. Back then, I think he wore 32 with the Cardinals, but just a wonderful, another big kind of running back that was the mold back then in the 90s with like Earl Campbell. Not as big as Earl Campbell. They also called him O.J. Anderson. Now we have Donovan McNabb. Now there's been a lot of talk about him in certain huddles and things about him maybe not liking everything, but I always thought he was a great player. He had a great college career at Syracuse. He led a lot of great teams. He was a tough guy to tackle, and he led a lot of those great teams in Philadelphia that went to the NFC Championship game, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row. Now, here's a name that unless you probably live in Chicago, you really don't even think about anymore. But for, I don't know, maybe a decade, all you heard about was Brian Urlacher, who was a linebacker with the Bears. And then since his retirement, you don't hear much from him. He's not on, I don't think he does any broadcasting or anything like that, but just a real good linebacker in the mold of those Chicago defenses back in the day. So wonderful. Now, here we go. I'm sure many of you will recognize this person. This is OJ Simpson, and this is a Pro Line card from, I believe, maybe 90. Let's see. Yeah, 91. They sort of had these casual looks, these portrait looks. And I just want to point out a quote that's on the back. On the back, they have a whole quote from him here. And in one sentence, he says, I learned early in life that it wasn't always the toughest kid who won the fights. Quite often, it was the guy who was in the best condition. Now, I know that that's not directly related to what happened to him later in the 90s, but it's a very interesting quote nonetheless. Probably kept him in good shape for a long time. Okay, now we have someone who's on TV all the time, Shannon Sharpe. Here he is, though, and I believe he won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. I believe he did, but here he is towards the end of his career with the Ravens. Still, obviously, a tight end. Put up some just monster numbers. You think of tight ends back in the day with 1,000 yards receiving. I mean, they just didn't do that until him and can't think of his name off the top of my head, but the guy from Kansas City, Tony Gonzalez. Here we have Drew Bledsoe, who was the predecessor to the GOAT in a Fleer tradition card. Curtis Martin, you might remember him, put up some big numbers with the Jets in the late 90s, early 2000s. Let's just see what it says on the, 95, 1,400 yards, 1,100 yards, 1,100 yards, 1,200 yards, 1,400 yards, 1,200 yards. Just put up some monster numbers back in the day and had a bunch of touchdowns. You look at his total touchdowns in 95, 15, then 17. He had 11 in 2000. Just Curtis Martin was a wonderful player in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we had Edgerrin James earlier. Now we have Marvin Harrison, who made up that big trio of Harrison, Edgerrin, and Manning back in the day with the Colts. Marcus Allen. Now, some people may think Marcus Allen, Raiders, towards the end of his career, him and Montana both went over to the Chiefs and had much success with them, led them to a couple AFC championship games. Very excited to see him in red. I know that he had some turmoil with the Raiders. There was some talk that he was being benched for reasons outside of football. He had just some monster numbers. 1,700 yards in rushing in 85. So he averaged over 100 yards per game. Just monster numbers. Hines Ward, maybe not a superstar, but a minor star here, playing for Pittsburgh, wide receiver, put up some very good numbers. Here we have 5'9" Doug Flutie, or let's see what it says here, because on other cards, it says 5'10" here. I've seen cards that say 5'9". Went to Boston College, had that miraculous touchdown to end the game, the bowl game, and then played in, I believe, the USFL for New York, and then bounced around with the Canadian Football League and came back around in the NFL. And then at some point he was with the Patriots, and he had that special kick for points, whatever it was, a drop kick. So Doug Flutie, 5'10", probably one of the shortest quarterbacks in the last 30 years. Ronnie Lott, who put on some of the biggest hits in the NFL. He's a Hall of Famer. Played most of his career with the 49ers. I want to say, like so many great players towards the end of their careers, went with the Raiders, or went to the Raiders. Now we have here Michael Irvin. This again is that Pro Line series that I had talked about earlier that had OJ Simpson. More of a portrait, obviously not, they're not on the field, they're not on the practice field, they're not, with their total gear on. They obviously, he has shorts on, so more of a portrait kind of look, a more casual look for these kinds of cards. Something a little bit different. I don't think it really won anyone over. Now, if you can't make out the name on the chest, what team, it's Indianapolis, but I had to look at this card a couple times because this person did not register with me. And there's a simple reason why I had a hard time picking out who this was. And it was basically because he didn't have what I used to call goggles or his glasses on. This is Eric Dickerson, who was a wonderful running back with the Rams, and then later on was traded or almost given away kind of to the Colts and had some success with them as well. But that's Eric Dickerson, and he's not wearing his very famous glasses. I used to call them goggles because that's what they look like, but very different looking in there. Now here's someone who back in 91 wasn't even playing, and he's a friend with Michael Jordan. Yes, that's true. It's Ahmad Rashad. He had been retired for some time. I think he had married the woman from the Cosby Show by this point, or was married to her, but that's another one of these pro line cards where it's very relaxed. Then we go into Lawrence Taylor, and what a great card this is. With, if I'm making out where both of his arms are coming out to grab the Detroit. I don't know who that is. That could be their quarterback, their running back, probably their quarterback, I want to say. And just a great card by Proset there, I thought. Now here's another good card. Proset had some really good in action photos, and they didn't have that border, so I think that, you know, their cards made it look more like a picture, and I like that about that. But here we have Barry Sanders, who I know there's documentaries about him, and with Detroit playing so well this year, more people talked about him, but he was something to watch. He was a lot of fun to watch, and he was very smooth on the field, and I'm sort of sad that he had to retire or decided to retire early. Then we moved to Troy Aikman, who was the quarterback for the Cowboys. Now, people may or may not remember that he went to Oklahoma, and then he transferred because he didn't like Oklahoma's coach, and all of a sudden the name escapes me. But then after 2 years, I want to say with Dallas and Jimmy Johnson, the coach from Oklahoma became the head coach of the Cowboys, and he had to deal with him anyway. But Troy Aikman putting up some big numbers back in the day, passing yards and touchdowns, and now known more for his broadcasting skills. Then we have Joe Montana, and this is obviously before he spent some time with the Chiefs. Joe Montana here went to Notre Dame, was 4 for 4 in Super Bowls. I want to say he beat the Bengals twice in 2 different Super Bowls, but he was probably the GOAT, or in the discussion of the GOAT, before Tom Brady and all of his championships. Now, a couple cards I want to point out that I have over the 90s. These are actually playing cards. They were bicycle playing cards, Ditka's picks, and we have Emmitt Smith here, obviously with the Cowboys, a legendary running back, finished his career with the Arizona Cardinals. Great picture here for him. Dan Marino, if you notice, he's an ace. Steve Young's an ace. Great cards. I got these at some sort of like dollar store years ago. A lot of fun to look at though, but Dan Marino putting up monster passing yards, and Steve Young, who went to Brigham Young University. He's a descendant of Brigham Young, on a playing card back from, I want to say these are from the 90s. There's no date on these, but somewhere around there. Okay, now we move into Michael Strahan. Now, unfortunately, they do not show the famous gap in his teeth, but he's probably much larger there than he is currently. I know that the camera adds 10 pounds, but he still doesn't look this big on TV as he did back then in his playing days. So. And then we have the GOAT, the wide receiver GOAT, who I actually have a little short movie about. I'll be putting that out soon. But Jerry Rice, just the best receiver in the world. One of the stories about him, and I want to share stories as much as I can. One of the reasons why they think he had these soft hands and he could catch the ball was mainly because his father was a bricklayer, I want to say, and he had bricks, and he would toss bricks to Jerry, I guess to stack up, to to move, something like that. So Jerry got his hands basically through catching bricks. So you had to kind of catch them soft. You didn't want to drop them because they would easily break. Almost probably the way you would catch an egg in some ways, but that was one of the reasons why they think he had such soft hands. Junior Seau, very unfortunate life completely, but he was just a total menace on the field. He did end his career with the Patriots, though, correct? Didn't he end his career late with the Patriots? I want to say that he did, but he had a phenomenal career as a linebacker. Here we have Brett Favre, who, and here's the trivia question: what team did he start with? Now, I'm not sure it's on the back of this, but we all know he played for the Green Bay Packers. But who drafted him? It's not going to say here. Well, maybe it will say. He was in 91. It was the Falcons. It was the Falcons, and he was number 2 with the Falcons, but he was 33rd overall. Was he the Falcons' second pick? I guess that's what it was, but he came up with the Falcons. All right, here's someone who was just phenomenal when he came out of college, broke all the records. Everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to be him. Everybody had his jersey. Everybody was wearing Atlanta Falcons, everything, all the time. Michael Vick then obviously ran into some issues with pets and dogs and things, but just a total quarterback that changed how we think of the quarterback position. He was just 6 foot, so he wasn't extraordinarily tall like they want quarterbacks. Brett Favre, on the other hand, let's see, he was only 6'2", but most quarterbacks, they want 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", kind of in that range. Michael Vick was just 6 foot, but he had speed. He was like a running back that could throw. Now, I have this card. This is Chris Weinke, and he was an older winner of the Heisman Trophy. I just find this card to be somewhat interesting because it looks like a deck of cards, but it's actually put out by Bowman. He won the Heisman Trophy at the age of 28, Chris Weinke. So just an interesting card, interesting look of a card. It has some of that die cut over there, something you don't normally see. Okay, then we have Chris Carter, who I want to say Chris Carter, did he always play with Minnesota? I can't really remember. If you guys remember, let me know. If he finished his career with another team. I want to think he actually came up with Philadelphia, now that I think about it. And I guess he was traded to Minnesota. So real big loss by Philadelphia, losing someone of Chris Carter's ability. Now here's someone, you know what? He's not really a star. He was a major bust. He put up some big numbers at Notre Dame. It's Tim Couch, if you can read that. I think that's the best way to look at it. I have a card of his that's actually a promotional card from the year he came out, but he was, let's see, in his rookie season, he passed for 2,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. Now, of course, it doesn't say how many interceptions he passed, but this was an edge card, which I don't even know if the Edge brand is still around. Maybe it is. Okay, here we go. This is an Arizona State guy who played for the Arizona Cardinals, Jake the Snake Plummer. I think he had a rebirth later in his career with another team like the Eagles or Giants or something like that. But he was mostly known in the Arizona area for all of his work. And he had some decent years. This year, he had 15 touchdowns and he had 15 touchdowns. Oh, this is after his first year. So 15 touchdowns and 15 interceptions for Jake Plummer. Now, here we go. This is a big one. He floated around. He was with Atlanta. He was with San Francisco. Then he was with the Cowboys. And I think that might be where he ended. But we have Deion Sanders here, who we all know is now the coach at Colorado. But this was the one year he went to San Francisco before he signed with the Cowboys, and he won the Super Bowl with them. Steve Young was the quarterback. I think this is when they started to use him as a receiver, I want to say, even when he was with San Francisco. I know he did it with the Cowboys, but I think San Francisco jumped on that wagon pretty early. Here we go with someone, and correct me if you don't know this, but did Sanders end with Baltimore? Thank you, Rashad. I appreciate that. He played in Baltimore, won a Super Bowl with them. Cool. Thank you very much. All right. Chad Johnson. What else do we know him by? I'm sure everybody knows that, but he is Ocho Cinco. Let's see. Someone's saying about Steve Smith. Steve Smith is better than Chad Ochocinco? Is that what you're saying? I mean, probably. But Ocho Cinco here, Chad Johnson got a lot more publicity than Steve Smith ever did. The numbers probably agree with you, though. I don't have those obviously in front of me, but Chad Johnson was a really good receiver. Now he was only 6'2", but he put up some really good years. He was somewhat of a malcontent though with the Bengals. So, all right, now we have Tony Romo, and I know we have 8 people on the line. Does anybody know where Tony Romo went to college? And I'll give you a hint. It's not one of the top football schools, or they're not even in one of the top conferences. And let me just check real quick. I looked at it. I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah. He was the top player in Division 1AA at Eastern Illinois. And the Eastern Illinois, I want to say Western Illinois, Eastern Illinois. Are they the Roughnecks, Eastern Illinois? I don't know. I forget the name of their nickname, but yeah, Tony Romo went to Eastern Illinois. So you see all these people and you hear about where they went to college and you just don't know where they are. Now, Terrell Owens, who had some monster years with Steve Young and everybody. I mean, he put up some major numbers. Let's see. He went to Tennessee Chattanooga for college, so put up some monster numbers. Now he was 6'3", and he kept making comebacks. Did Terrell Owens end up with? The Raiders? I forget where he ended up with. He was with the Cowboys. And I thought he might have ended up with the Raiders where everybody. Now, this is Thurman Thomas. Again, these are those weird, I'm going to lose people on this. Pro Line back in 91 put together these weird cards that were more like portraits of the players. And this is Thurman Thomas, who had just an outstanding career with the Buffalo Bills, and their 4 losses. And their trio was Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, and Jim Kelly. The 4 Super Bowl losses. Now we're going to go through a couple more. Well, I got a few more people on the line. I'll go for about 5-6 more minutes. Here we have a traded card of Matt Hasselbeck. Now you think of Green Bay. Okay, he was with Green Bay. He was traded to Seattle. He had an okay time with Seattle, but they had Scott Brunell. I can't think of his first name. Brunell with the Jags. They had him. So Green Bay was kind of a quarterback system back in the day, factory, I guess. Warrick Dunn, he made up the running tandem, right? Warrick Dunn made up the running tandem with Tampa Bay after a while. Wasn't it Mike Alstead and Warrick Dunn? But maybe I'm wrong here because he's with the Falcons. But Mike Alstead was almost like a fullback. He was a huge runner, and then they had speed with Warrick Dunn. These are some more obscure players. So Marty Booker with the Chicago Bears, Kevin Falk, whose claim to fame, he did win a Super Bowl, but his claim to fame probably is more of being Marshall Faulk's brother, but he did win a Super Bowl. Now we do know, we have a record here of Jerry Rice with the Raiders. We know he played with the Raiders. We know he spent most of his time with the 49ers, and we know that he's the best running back that ever was, TJ Duckett. Okay, TJ Duckett was with the Falcons then, right? Rashad? Okay, Kevin Falk was so good. Yes, he was very good with the Pats. Now, Jeff Blake was a quarterback with the Bengals, and this is some weird card that they did with Joe Namath. I guess it was Broadway Review or something of Jeff Blake. Never really made anything of it. This is one of those remake cards of Tom Fears. Okay, more Pro Line cards coming up here. This is Jim Kelly's Pro Line portrait kind of photo card back in the day. Here we go with Steve Young. They're all kind of in their gear, but just more casual. Then we have another card of Emmitt Smith. Kind of a nice card. Like I said, a lot of these Pro Set cards were in action. I talked about this earlier if you were on. Tim Couch played for Notre Dame. This is the promotional sample from his rookie year. He was really a bust, no doubt about it. Johnny Morton, I kind of always expected more from Johnny Morton. He went to UCLA. See, how tall was he? I guess he was only 6 foot. Boy, I think these guys are a lot taller. I think I always thought he was going to be better, but he was with those Lions teams that were not very good around the turn of the century. So Travis Minor was supposed to be something. He never worked out. Corin Robinson. What is that? Is that South Carolina or is that Stanford right there? I can't make it out. He was supposed to be something. He didn't pan out. And I say these guys are supposed to be something because I collected like multiple cards of them. I'm only showing you one or two of them, and I thought this Michael Bennett for the Vikings was going to be something. I have a bunch of Michael Bennett cards. Oh, Boston College. Yes, you're right. That was Corin Robinson, right? Corin Robinson. And then I thought Michael Bennett, who went to, I think it says it on here. He's from Wisconsin, but that doesn't mean he went there. Oh, yeah. He went to Wisconsin. Oh, that was the thing I wanted to show you. Okay, what's weird about these cards, these are the same year card. One is Chris Chambers and one is Michael Bennett. And they both went to Wisconsin. This is very odd. Okay. And on Chris Chambers' card, they spell it out as Wisconsin, if you can see that. But on Michael Bennett's card, they have the Badgers. So it's really weird that a card company would kind of classify the college with two different names in the same year. And actually, they're only 3 cards apart, 234 to 237. But they both went to Wisconsin and they have different definitions. Now, here's some real rare people. Correll Buckhalter. I thought he was going to be something. He was... I don't know what I was smoking. I guess he had a 750-yard season. I guess I looked at that. Kevin Barlow was another big back. He did get to 1,000 yards. He was with the Panthers. He went to the 49ers. I thought he was going to be big. That guy, nobody knows. David Boston. Did I show him already? He was another big receiver with the Cardinals, 6'2". James Stewart had, I think, some good seasons with the Jags back in the day. He went to Tennessee, but he put up some big numbers for them. Marcus Robinson. This was the other running back who was there with Corey Dillon, Rudy Johnson. He had a couple good seasons as well. They had a real good tandem back in the day. I know they say that pro football has, running backs that have tandems, but if you think about it, in the 90s and 2000s, right there, you have Rudy Johnson, you had Corey Dillon, you had people like that. You had Warwick Dunn, and I think you had said it was TJ Duckett, and then there was Mike Alstead and somebody else with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You kind of did that with actually, I have a few more cards, and then I'll probably call it a night. Okay, so if you want to look at, and these are kind of a rare breed. You don't see a lot of them. I know you see them out there, but these are the actual USFL cards of some of the more famous players that you would think. Like here, I know I showed Steve Young, but here's Steve Young with the LA Express. I do believe that he had fit. Oh, that's his college. Never mind. I believe that they won the championship with him. Like when he went to Tampa Bay after the USFL closed or folded, whatever it was, I believe that he went to, I believe that they at least won the championship one year. Then we have Herschel Walker with the Generals. And as you may or may not realize, one of the reasons why Herschel Walker, I think, even ran for political office was because he was probably influenced by Donald Trump. Donald Trump owned the New Jersey Generals, right? They were the New Jersey Generals. I want to say they were the New Jersey Generals. They weren't the New York Generals. Anyway, but Trump owned that team, and they got to know each other through that way. So that was also, I think, why Herschel was on Celebrity Apprentice. as well back in the day when Trump was running that. Okay, and then we have just a great guy. He's battled, I think, cancer twice. Jim Kelly, who went to what, Miami? Does it say here? No, yeah, he went to Miami. He's from Pennsylvania. I mean, you look at, but see, they have career totals, so it's a little misleading. I wish they had it, but here's something on February 24th in 1985, Jim Kelly passed for 574 yards in a 34-33 win versus LA, which means probably that Steve Young was the quarterback, is just my guess. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe these are 85 cards. Oh, they must have come out after the season, but I would assume Steve Young was in that game. Okay, then we have the Doug Flutie. Now remember, Doug Flutie on the last card I showed, if you were on that. Is he still alive? Yeah, Jim Kelly's still alive, I'm pretty sure. I believe he's still in the Buffalo area, but they had him. Oh, it doesn't. Yep, see, they had him on that other card at 5'10". Here he's 5'9". I just find it interesting. He's probably begging for as many opportunity to get taller as he possibly can. But Doug Flutie, I believe, went to the USFL. Then he might have played with the Bears for a short period of time after the USFL folded. Then he went to the Canadian Football League. And then I think Buffalo signed him, and he finished his career with the New England Patriots as a backup quarterback. And I don't know what that's called, but he did that special kick where it was like a field goal, but he drop kicked it. I forget what it's called, but it was it hadn't been done in like 50 years. Now, here's someone who's no longer with us, Rashad. Reggie White. He was with the Memphis Showboats. He's the Minister of Defense. Now, remember, his big claim to fame was in the NFL, playing with the Green Bay Packers. And finally, the man who was asked some ridiculous questions when he led the Redskins to the Super Bowl and to the Super Bowl win was Doug Williams, and he played for the Outlaws, which were the Outlaws. Was it Vegas Outlaws? I can't remember the city. The Outlaws played for my Panthers. Oh, did Reggie White play for the Panthers? Is that what you're saying? He probably did then. Okay. Flutie Flakes with the Chargers. That's right. Yes, first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. The Outlaws, though, I forget what team that is. And well, he was asked, Rashad, he was asked a question about being something. There was some famous quote of him, and I have a short video on him as well, but it was, what do you feel? Was it some reporter asked him, like, what do you feel like being a black quarterback or something like that? And he had a great response to that. So, but the Outlaws, are they the Vegas Outlaws? I can't remember who it probably is some Texas, Houston Outlaws. It's probably Houston or the Dallas Outlaws or something like that. That's probably what it was. So, but he had some good numbers with them. Let's see, NFL, he played in the NFL before this. So I'm assuming that's when he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the NFL. And then he had some good seasons with attempts, career totals. Okay. He had 3 rushing touchdowns with the USFL. He had 13 touchdowns rushing with the NFL. So had some good numbers rushing. He was one of those mobile quarterbacks. Yeah, Doug Williams, great person. All right. Well, I'm going to end it there, and I will be back on tomorrow night with baseball cards. I know if you're a football fan, you're probably not going to want to watch that, but I'll be on with baseball cards. And just as a sneak preview, one of my favorite cards, a 1983 Fleer card. Why is it so? Why? Okay, you Redskins. Oh, he was with the Redskins. Yeah, well, yeah, he was with the Redskins. But I was trying to figure out what city the Outlaws were from. Okay, we're going baseball, and here's the answer to a trivia question. Who's the only person to have a hit for 2 teams in one day, and that was Joel Youngblood. He was with the Mets. It was a day game. He was traded to the Expos, who had a night game, and he had a hit with both teams. So just one of my favorite cards from growing up, 1983 Fleer. 2 teams, same day, had a hit in both games. It looks like it was August 4th, 1982. But tomorrow night will be baseball, and I'll show them different things. I'll have different sports like I did last night, sort of wrapped up in it as well. So until then, talk to you guys. Thanks, Rashad, for all your comments. Javier, thank you. Everybody else, let's see. Cruz, Eric, all the comments I really appreciate. And I'll be back on at 7 o'clock Central. I'm in the St. Louis area, so I refer to that. So 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central, 5 o'clock Pacific. Talk to you then.